1 week from tonight marks the 50th anniversary of D-Day, the moment of truth when Allied forces landed on the beaches of Normandy to put an end to Adolf Hitler's threat of world domination. In tonight's cover story, we begin our special tribute to the heroes of Normandy, heroes we found right here in Western New York, men who put it all on the line in the name of freedom.
Almighty God, our sons, pride of our nation, this day have set upon a mighty endeavor.
President Roosevelt had prepared our country for what was to be the largest invasion our nation had ever launched against an enemy. D-Day, the invasion of Normandy.
Rough day, you know. It's a lot of deaths and burned up bodies here and there, you know.
Mike Accordino was among the first soldiers to hit Omaha Beach.
The water is splashing all around us, you know, the bullets, machine gun bullets, and then the shells going off, which were going off on the way in.
His buddy from Buffalo, Billy Scanlon, was behind him. And typical of the way Billy was, says Mike, he was more concerned about others than himself.
Mike, you all right? I said, yeah, I'm fine.
That's the last he ever heard from Billy's lips. Mike made his way alone toward the beach. Billy Scanlon and the others with him took a mortar shot from the Germans.
You feel guilty that you lived. To me, they're family.
When Mike Accordino talks about family here, he means all his buddies from the 299th Engineer Combat Battalion. It was their job to destroy all the obstacles the Germans had placed on the beach, including mines. Mike won the Purple Heart after surviving a mine explosion. He had many a close brush with death.
As I'm running, the sand kicking up all around me. And the machine gun bullets were coming closer, so I passed the obstacle, I turned around and ran back to the obstacle and laid there for a while.
Mike had lost his rifle when he had first hit the water and tumbled upside down with 40 pounds of explosives strapped to his body, but he managed to carry out his duties. All he had left was a rosary and prayers in his heart to counter a recurring fear.
My innermost thoughts before I made the invasion that I would never have a family.
Maybe that's why he treasures this note from Nicky, one of his 4 grandchildren, who thanked him for protecting his freedom. After surviving D-Day and the Battle of the Bulge, Michael Accordino received this prayer book with a metal cover from his sister. May the Lord be with you, it says. Just for good measure, he put it in his breast pocket and wore it over his heart. Billy Scanlon had carried with him this picture of himself with his parents, the picture that was handed to Mike on Omaha Beach after Billy was killed. There were other pictures that Mike saw as well, pictures scattered in the water and the sands of Omaha Beach around the bodies of boys who would never come home. And it's for these men that Mike Accordino sheds tears this Memorial Day, and for each and every combat buddy who experienced what he experienced that day on June 6, 1944, on the beaches of Normandy.
I tell you, every day of my life I think about it. I always have a prayer for those guys.
All this week at 6, you will also meet others who were there on the beaches of Normandy, whose memories seem to be as vivid as the film that captured that event for all time. Heroes of Normandy, whose sacrifices we shall never forget. This is D-6, 6 days away from the 50th anniversary of D-Day, the Allied invasion of Europe. While we have been focusing on the soldiers who first made it to the beaches of Normandy, tonight we pay a special tribute to the combat engineers who made it possible for our men to advance into Germany and confront the enemy on his own turf. That's our cover story tonight as we salute the heroes of Normandy. After the beaches of Normandy were secured, members of the 291st Combat Engineers advanced through France and to the Rhine River. The Germans knew they had to stop the Allied soldiers from crossing the Rhine.
Guys were dropping around me, and every time the shells come over, we'd run to hide. No more noise, we'd go back to build.
Joe Mazurka helped build the first bridge across the Rhine, constantly under fire. But they had to build this tactical bridge because the Germans had knocked out all the other crossing points. They had to keep building.
It was repaired several times because it was hit. And you got to take the hit sections out and put new ones under fire.
The young soldier from South Buffalo knew the price that had to be paid to win the war. Men lost their lives building these bridges. Joe never knew from moment to moment if he'd be next.
Shells are frightening. They drive you nuts. Everybody's afraid of shelling. Because if you were shot from a distance, you ain't gonna know it. But that shelling is nerve-wracking.
Finally, the bridge was completed, and Joe Mazurkowitz witnessed the first crossing.
Oh, you feel great. You say, God, yes, you feel great, yes.
He escaped death many times. Once, a 500-pound bomb fell 10 yards from his squad.
And when it hit, the dirt fell all over us, and like dummies, we want to see and look. And then we once saw the hole, and you could see the hole following the bomb. And we says, it's a bomb, hit the dirt. We were stupid. I mean, we should have hit the dirt first. That's lucky. Why didn't it go off? I had a charmed life.
Throughout the war, Joe carried this picture of his fiancée, Irene Padima, in his pocket. It was folded up at the time. Later, he had a portrait made from the picture. This image, he said, led me through thick and thin, life and death, with hope in my heart.
And I married my sweetheart when I come back. We were engaged when I left. She waited for me. We got married. We're married going on 49. And I still love her.
Joe has several medals he is proud of, including this one for Normandy, the Battle of the Bulge, and crossing the Rhine. He is going back overseas for the 50th anniversary of D-Day and will retrace his steps with his war buddies.
I'm only going out of remembering the guys that died, and I feel I owe it to, they're part of me. I don't care. I want to go there, see, and have a prayer, and if I have to cry, I'll cry. But I just want to go, that's all, you know.
Tomorrow night we feature a Western New Yorker who met the enemy in the skies over northern France as we continue our week-long tribute to the heroes of Normandy.
We are just days away from the 50th anniversary of D-Day, when the forces of freedom came to liberate Europe from the Nazi menace.
And a hero of Normandy who rose to the challenge is the subject of tonight's cover story from Doug Smith.
This plane here.
This is the story of a man in his plane, Lieutenant Walter Grabowski in his P-47. Think he's not still proud? Think he ever had any reluctance?
Man, I wanted to fly single-engine fighters so bad I could taste it. And I was just lucky.
And then he went into battle, taking out an Axis position, and wondered just how lucky he could be.
My flight leader, he went down, and I followed, and here's flak is going like the bing, 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 bing. I'll never forget. I says, Grabowski, what the hell are you doing here?
What Walter Grabowski was doing there was clearing the Allied way across Europe. Now, he didn't even know infantryman John Leopold at the time, but now they're neighbors, sharing those times when they helped save the world, and mostly admitting the fear.
Naturally, you're scared.
You're quite scared when
you're real scared because you don't know what lies ahead of you, you know, and you start getting artillery barrages. And
right.
Stenciled on the fuselage of Walter Grabowski's plane, the bombs, the umbrellas, the sweeps all testify to his time in the air. And Walter testifies to the time the ground came up too fast.
Boom! My left wing gets hit by this 40-millimeter flak. And next thing I know, I'm flying slightly sideways, and I take a look out, and I got a frightened copper metallic taste in my mouth. Just when I saw that my wing was knocked off.
But Walter Grabowski made it safely back to the ground, as he has so many years since at Normandy reunions, where their airfield neighbors greet them every time with a gratitude which is much like Walter Grabowski himself, something that survives the years and everything else.
What I'm getting so much out of this is it seems as if these people will never forget you.
Oh, no, they
I mean, they can never for the rest of their lives do enough for you.
Right. They can't do enough for the American veteran.
For all the flak and the flying and the fear, Walter Grabowski will always know exactly why he was there. Doug Smith, News 4 at 6.
What am I doing here, he says. Join us again tomorrow night at 6 as we salute another of our heroes of Normandy.
Tens of thousands of Americans stared death in the face during the D-Day invasion nearly 50 years ago, and thousands never lived to tell about it.
But many survived, some because of a young medic named Mel Mac Oh from Western New York. His life-saving mission is the subject of Doug Smith's cover story tonight on the Heroes of Normandy.
When the first guns of Normandy sounded, Mel Mac Oh was waiting offshore, for to him and his colleagues would fall the task of serving the wounded and dying of D-Day.
To me, when we started down on that rope ladder from the ship, it looked like it was forever going down to the landing craft. And then we got down, and then we got on the landing craft, and then we got to the shore, and then we had to take off our belts, and we threw the belts on the beach. I said, "Oh, this is the point of no return, because I'm not going to swim that channel back even if we have to."
Mel was a steel worker from Youngstown, and not even the Army's best efforts could prepare him for Normandy's horrors.
The first 3 days I did not sleep. I couldn't sleep. I was emotionally upset. I'd lay down there and I would just jerk. I couldn't. So finally, when they put our regiment in reserve, and the captain gave me a sleeping pill, and I slept for 20 hours. I got up, and from that time on, for the rest of the time I was in war, I had no difficulty, because at any time of the day or night, we were supposed to get up. Whenever we had casualties come in, he was very emphatic that we be clean-shaven, and we treat them with as much courtesy as we can, no laughing or no joking in there. He said, these boys have just come back from being in combat, and he says, nothing is too good for these boys.
Mel's medics even treated German prisoners and saved the life of at least one French civilian. And then...
How did you get the Purple Heart? What happened to you to cause you?
Well,
and who treated you?
In fact, I thought I lost my eye. And if you'll see here, there's a V there, sort of like a V right here. If that had been a quarter of an inch deeper, that'd right through the jugular. But anyhow, he saw me all up, and he was crying. I says, Pete, take it easy. I says, here, now you do this. You get the Spanish. You put this over my eye. You put the bandage here. Give me a shot of, what do they call it when they give you anyhow, give me a shot there.
IV?
Not IV, just a shot. And I says, that's all. You just take care of that. Do that. I'll be all right. And he's crying away.
When VE Day came, there were no more tears for Mel Mac Oh, only the remembrance of 4.5 years of healing and the gratitude of those he served.
When they'd bring in a casualty, and he'd be laying there and almost unconscious, and we would work on him and maybe give him a unit of plasma. And by the time we were finished with it, he'd get up and he could sit up, or he could wake up and say thank you. That's when you had a feeling of really knowing that you've helped someone.
Doug Smith, News 4 at 6.
We hope you'll join us tomorrow night at 6 when we return to the battlefields of Normandy to hear the story of yet another of the heroes of Normandy.
They left their homes as boys. They came back as men.
And many were changed forever after the D-Day invasion of Normandy. We see them as heroes today, but can only try and imagine what they experienced confronting the enemy. The nights were among the most haunting times for young American soldiers who wondered if German bombs would have their names on them.
The sky would light up just like a screen with tracer bullets. They in turn dropped what they call 1-pound bombs or 1-pound eggs from a plane. And if you do get hit, how hard are you going to get hit? Are you going to get hit hard enough to take you right out, or are you going to suffer, you know? Because there's so much suffering going on.
Earl McDermott's job was to keep the anti-aircraft guns working. He was a welder who made on-the-spot repairs. He entered the beaches of Normandy 7 days after the invasion and then fought his way through battles at Saint-Lô and Cherbourg in France and the Bulge in Belgium.
You're going to get through this day to see the next day. I see bodies in the ditches along the road, and that fellas laying there.
And if it wasn't the enemy who wore you down, it was the elements.
With the rain every day and the mud It's unbelievable how we lived, how we did get sick and die because of the rain and the wet and the mud and the slop.
Thoughts of his fiancée, now his wife, and thoughts of coming home helped get Earl McDermott through the thick of it. And when he finally did return home,
oh, he sure grew up. Yes, he was more mature and he changed and thought more about things like home and home life.
and always about his buddies who did not come home. Every Memorial Day since Earl McDermott returned from war, he and his wife Jean have placed American flags on the graves of fallen soldiers and loved ones who have passed away. And Earl's thoughts at this time of year go back to those terrible moments of war when he put his own life on the line.
You went in, you had a job to do, and you wanted to fulfill your job and then go home. And when it was all over, I'm glad I went in, I did what I did.
D-Day is Monday. Join us that night at 6 when we bring you another report on the heroes of Normandy. You know, Carol, he remembers the image of the tide changing and thousands of Germans being taken prisoner and then shipped across the Channel, some back to the United States as POWs.
It took 11 months from landing on the beaches to the completion of getting Europe.
Oh, there was a lot after the invasion.
A long time. The image we have relived on this 50th anniversary of D-Day is the storming of the beaches of Normandy.
But hours before the invasion began, paratroopers and pathfinders descended behind enemy lines to set the stage for the big moment. And one of those pathfinders has relived the horrors of war over and over again, but he had the courage today to talk about his experience.
You see things. I mean, you hear the guns, you see the people. You're fighting them.
It's been 50 years to the day since this soldier from Buffalo helped lead the way to the biggest invasion ever mounted against an enemy. He remembers being addressed by Ike and then being bogged down with equipment as he and his buddies with the 101st Airborne Division entered the planes that would drop them behind enemy lines miles from the beaches of Normandy.
Oh, I don't know, about 30 pounds in my leg. I had the radar equipment. Yeah, well, you get a little push.
There had been some joking earlier, but now silence.
We got on that plane, and they revved those motors. It got very quiet. Everybody was into their own thoughts, practically. We knew that if we didn't get down or something happened to it, they weren't coming in. I mean, they'd come in, but they wouldn't know where to come in.
They all stood up and hooked up for the jump as their plane was flying over the coast. Their job was to light up the ground for the gliders carrying equipment and for the paratroopers who would soon follow. Don Green badly jammed his knee when he came down hard in the chute, and then in an eerie silence on the ground, almost shot one of his closest friends by mistake.
I heard his footsteps coming. And it's a good thing he talked. He said, "Where are you, Sarge?" I said, "Over here," and it was Hensley, but you know, you shoot a grasshopper, you shoot anything, you're so keyed up.
Then the real nightmare began. The gliders started descending, many hitting power lines, houses, and each other. Don Green at first didn't know how bad things had become for the men inside.
We were ducking the damn gliders. But the next morning it was horrible. They were all...
He remembers the men in pain inside the gliders, where jeeps and equipment had shifted on impact.
And they were just like crushed in there, you know. They couldn't get out or holler. And we couldn't get them out with that sniper fire. And we went around, we hit a few of them in the arm with some of the ones that we could get close to and give them a shot in the arm from their medical thing.
Theirs was that very critical first step in the march to final victory.
We tend to glorify D-Day, and proud we should be, but always remembering those who gave their lives, and those like Don Green who have had to relive the most awful nightmares of war.
You hear them hollering and yelling. One minute they're there, the next minute you wonder why, you know.
laughter to tears. Some lighter moments, Don Green and General Patton had a beer together, and all of this came back today during our interview.
It was from laughter to tears like that, isn't it? Very emotional. What about tomorrow night, Rich? We have some, we're gonna wrap it up.
Tomorrow night, we're going to hear from a local black hero of Normandy who is fighting 2 wars. One of them for the country, one for his own personal freedom.
Our cover story tonight is a tale of 2 soldiers.
One is a man who fought for this country even after suffering from the racial blindness of his countrymen. The other is a man blinded in battle who never lost sight of the importance of D-Day. They are heroes of Normandy.
How many hearts have you broken with those great, big, beautiful eyes?
Len Peraza was blinded when a German grenade went off in front of his face. 54 days earlier, he had been on the beach in Normandy for D-Day.
I thought I was going to go all the way. I thought I was going to go right to Berlin. I didn't think they were going to get me down.
This young soldier from Buffalo's west side was trained for close combat as a ranger with the 29th Combat Division. During the fighting after D-Day, he was wounded when he fought off 3 German soldiers with bayonets. A few days later, he was hit by shrapnel, and then the grenade that took away his sight. Blinded, he picked up another wounded soldier and put him on his back.
He couldn't walk, but he could see. And so I put him on my back, and I told him what to look for. We made our way back to the battalion aid station. And I laid him on one stretcher, and I just laid over on another one.
Every soldier who went through Normandy has a story. They share a common bond for life. But there are some veterans of the invasion who look back on that time with divided feelings because they were made to feel different, simply because of the color of their skin.
I didn't have the privilege that the other had. I couldn't go here, I couldn't go there.
John Montague remembers the segregated army that invaded Europe. His job was to carry ammunition and supplies, but he couldn't eat with white soldiers. As a young boy growing up in North Carolina, he had witnessed a lynching, and after being a part of the Allied invasion of Europe, he had a hard time stomaching racial hatred during the war.
I went in the latrine one night, and this guy was saying to his buddy, if it wasn't for these niggers over here, we could get some of these girls, you know? So I heard him.
But just as he inscribed the words Omaha Beach on the canteen he carried through the war, he carries memories of the war in his mind, a war he was proud to have fought for his country.
I wouldn't give my experience for anything. I felt like I was defending my country.
It has been a privilege and an honor to talk with the heroes of Normandy and hear their stories firsthand. Their struggle and sacrifice has made it possible, of course, for us to enjoy freedom.
They didn't seem reluctant, though, to tell their stories to you, Rich.
Well, to a person, they downplayed their stories, and suddenly they began to remember and unfold, and you can just sense the heroism and the courage. And I want to add that I said a personal thank you, really from the heart, to each of the men that I interviewed.